He wasn't just a football player, he was a phenomenon. Diego Maradona didn't play the game, he redefined it. From the slums of Buenos Aires to lifting the World Cup, his story is a wild ride of genius, controversy, and raw human emotion. Let us dive into the top 10 facts about the man who made the world believe that soccer could be art and chaos at the same time. About 10. The boy from Villa Fiorito. Diego Armando Maradona was born on October 30th, 1960, in Villa Fiorito, one of Buenos Aires' poorest neighborhoods. His childhood was defined by poverty, mud, and a burning passion for football. He grew up in a small shack with no running water, sharing a single room with his 7 siblings. Yet, from the moment he could walk, he had a ball at his feet. His first football wasn't even a real one. It was a crumpled bundle of rags tied together. But in those tight dirt alleys, Diego learned control, balance, and magic. Local kids recall that even as a child, he could dribble through a crowd without losing the ball once. By the age of 8, his talent was impossible to ignore. A local scout spotted him and brought him to Los Cebolitas, the youth team of Argentinos juniors. That team became legendary, not because of its victories, but because it never lost a game in the 3 years Maradona played there. He led them through an 136-game unbeaten streak, dribbling past kids twice his size and leaving even adults speechless. One coach recalled, "It was like watching God play barefoot." But for young Diego, football wasn't just a game, it was a lifeline. He once said, "I wanted to be a professional footballer, not for fame, but so I could buy my parents a proper house." When he finally did, he bought them a home in a middle-class Buenos Aires neighborhood, the first time the Maradona family had running water and electricity. What makes this story even more remarkable is how fast he rose. By the age of 15, he debuted for Argentinos juniors in Argentina's top division, becoming the youngest player ever at that time. The boy from the slums was now a national sensation. His raw flair, his street-born creativity, and his rebellious grin gave hope to millions of poor Argentine kids who saw in him a reflection of their own struggle. Diego's rise wasn't just talent, it was defiance. He played like someone who refused to be ignored, like every touch of the ball was a rebellion against fate. Villa Fiorito may have shaped his toughness, but the world would soon see how that fire would both make and destroy him. Number 9. The Hand of God and the Goal of the Century. If there's one moment that defines Diego Maradona, it's June 22, 1986, at the World Cup in Mexico. Argentina faced England in a quarterfinal that carried more than just football rivalry. It was a match charged with history. The Falklands War between the two nations had ended only 4 years earlier, and for many Argentines, this was a symbolic rematch. Maradona dominated the game in a way that seemed superhuman, but it was 2 goals, within 4 minutes of each other, that became immortal. The first, infamously, was the Hand of God. Maradona leapt for a high ball against England, ES goalkeeper Peter Shilton, and used his left hand to punch it into the net. The referees didn't see it, the goal stood, and Maradona later shrugged it off, saying, "It was a little with the head of Maradona and a little with the hand of God." That cheeky grin and audacity summed him up perfectly, brilliant and controversial in the same heartbeat. But then came redemption. Just 4 minutes later, Maradona scored what FIFA later named the goal of the century. He picked up the ball in his own half, spun past 2 defenders, sprinted 40 meters, beat another 2, rounded the goalkeeper, and scored. It wasn't just skill, it was artistry. The English commentator shouted, "You have to say that's magnificent," while the Argentine commentator went into an emotional frenzy, crying, "Cosmic kite, what planet did you come from?" That single match captured everything about Maradona: the trickster, the genius, the fighter, and the showman. The first goal represented his cunning, the second, his brilliance. It was as if in those 2 moments he revealed the 2 sides of his soul, one divine, one defiant. After the match, he said, "Revenge? No. But that day, it felt like justice for a wounded nation." And for Argentina, it was more than football. It was pride, healing, and belief restored. In that stadium in Mexico City, Diego Maradona didn't just win a match. He became immortal. Figure 8, the Napoli miracle, turning an underdog into a legend. When Diego Maradona arrived in Naples in 1984, Napoli was not a football powerhouse. It was an underdog in every sense. The club was drowning in debt, its stadium was half empty, and northern Italian fans often mocked southern teams with open disdain. The north-south divide in Italy wasn't just economic, it was cultural. Southern Italians were stereotyped as poor, lazy, and backward. Naples carried that burden, and football was one of the few things that gave its people pride. Then came Diego. The transfer from Barcelona to Napoli cost a record $10.5 million, an insane figure at the time. People doubted the move, claiming that Maradona's talent was too great for such a small club. But within weeks, the city fell in love. One journalist wrote, "Naples doesn't have a king, but now it has a god." Maradona didn't just score goals, he transformed the entire identity of a city, streets filled with murals of him. Babies were named after him, and churches hung his posters like holy icons. His arrival gave Naples something it hadn't had in generations: hope. By 1987, that hope turned into history. Under Maradona's leadership, Napoli won its first-ever Serie A title. It wasn't just a victory, it was a revolution. The South finally triumphed over the North. During the celebration, fans poured into the streets chanting, "We have seen paradise because we have Maradona." And it didn't stop there. Napoli went on to win the Italian Cup, the UEFA Cup, and another Serie A championship in 1990. Each time, Diego was the heart of the storm, creating, scoring, inspiring. His charisma on and off the field made him more than a player. He became the symbol of rebellion, of Southern pride, of the impossible made real. But fame and adoration came with a dark side. The more beloved he became, the harder it was to stay grounded. Naples worshipped him, but it also consumed him. Behind the glory were the whispers of organized crime connections, late-night parties, and drug use. For Diego, Naples was heaven and hell all at once. Still, even today, when you walk through the city, you'll see his face on walls, shrines, and storefronts. To Neapolitans, Maradona wasn't just their hero. He was family. He was the man who lifted an entire city on his shoulders and gave them something money could never buy: dignity. As one mural reads in Naples, "Dios no muere." God doesn't die. Figure 7, the scandal, the fall, and the human behind the legend. Every rise has its fall, and for Maradona, it came in the most dramatic fashion. By the early 1990s, his life in Naples had spiraled out of control. Years of relentless pressure, constant attention, and fame had pushed him to the edge. The city's love turned into obsession, and Diego began to drown in it. In 1991, his world came crashing down. He tested positive for cocaine and was banned from football for 15 months. The news exploded across headlines. For the man who had once been untouchable, it was a public humiliation. Fans were shocked. Critics were merciless. But behind the scenes, Maradona's struggle wasn't just with drugs. It was with loneliness, fame, and the crushing expectations that came with being a living god. He later admitted, "I used drugs to escape, not from football, but from reality." When he tried to make a comeback, things only got harder. His health began to deteriorate, his weight fluctuated, and the media stalked him relentlessly. In the 1994 World Cup in the United States, he seemed to have regained his magic. He scored a brilliant goal against Greece and celebrated with that famous fierce glare at the camera. But just days later, FIFA announced he had failed a drug test for ephedrine. He was expelled from the tournament, and the image of him being led off the field by a nurse became one of football sport's most haunting moments. Maradona's downfall wasn't just about drugs, it was a tragedy of excess. He was too loved, too pressured, too human to carry the weight of his own myth. Yet even in disgrace, people couldn't stop loving him. There was something deeply human about his imperfection. Unlike polished modern stars, Diego was raw. He made mistakes, admitted them, and never pretended to be a saint. He once told a reporter, "I made mistakes, but I paid for them. The ball never betrayed me. It's the only pure thing I've ever had." And that's what kept fans loyal to him. They didn't love him because he was perfect. They loved him because he wasn't. He embodied the messy beauty of life itself, brilliant and broken, gifted and flawed, divine and human all at once. By the time he left Italy in disgrace, Diego Maradona's career seemed over. But legends never fade, they evolve. And soon, the world would see that even after the fall, he still had one more miracle left in him. Chapter 6. The Savior of Argentina, 1986, World Cup Glory. There are great players, and then there are players who define entire tournaments. Diego Maradona didn't just play the 1986 World Cup, he owned it. Held in Mexico, the tournament became the stage for one of the most dominant individual performances in sports history. While most teams relied on systems and structure, Argentina relied on one man. Maradona captained a team that many analysts didn't even expect to reach the semifinals. Argentina wasn't packed with superstars like Brazil or Germany, but it had Maradona, and that was enough. From the very first match, he seemed unstoppable. He wasn't just scoring, he was controlling the rhythm of every game, dictating plays like a conductor leading an orchestra. In the quarterfinal against England, the same match that gave us the Hand of God, It and Itu, goal of the century, Maradona carried Argentina on his back. But what people sometimes forget is that he continued that dominance all the way through to the final. Against Belgium in the semifinal, he scored 2 stunning goals, weaving through defenders like ghosts. And then, in the final against West Germany, he was double-marked, fouled constantly, and suffocated every time he touched the ball. But even under that pressure, he delivered the decisive assist to Jorge Burruchaga for the winning goal. Argentina won 3-2, and the country erupted in joy. Maradona lifted the trophy high above his head in the scorching Mexican sun, a small man with the power of a nation in his hands. Commentators around the world called it destiny. Back home in Argentina, millions poured into the streets, chanting his name. For a country that had just emerged from a brutal military dictatorship and economic hardship, Maradona's victory wasn't just about football. It was redemption, unity, and pride. He was 25 years old. At that moment, he wasn't just a player, he was a god. Even years later, when asked about that World Cup, Maradona said, "It wasn't me alone who won. It was every Argentine who believed." But everyone knew the truth. Without Diego, that team would never have lifted the cup. His performance remains one of the greatest displays of individual genius the sport has ever seen. For many fans, that was the moment Maradona transcended football. He became a symbol of what one person could do when the world doubted them. A reminder that magic is real, at least for 90 minutes. Number 5. The political rebel and global icon. Maradona wasn't just a footballer. He was a man who wore his beliefs on his sleeve, literally. He was fiercely political, passionately outspoken, and completely unfiltered. Unlike most modern athletes who avoid controversy, Diego never stayed silent. He grew up poor and never forgot his roots. Throughout his life, he spoke out against what he saw as injustice, inequality, and exploitation. He was openly critical of the rich and powerful, famously saying, "The people don't eat football, the people need justice." In Argentina, that made him a hero of the working class. But his views went far beyond sport. Maradona formed friendships with figures like Fidel Castro, Hugo Chavez, and even Che Guevara, whose image he had tattooed on his right arm. He called Castro his second father, And after the Cuban leader's death, Maradona said, "He gave me everything. He taught me to fight for what's right." He even had Fidel's face tattooed on his leg. These relationships made him a controversial figure in Western media, but Maradona didn't care. He believed that athletes should have a voice in global issues. During one interview, he declared, "I am with the poor, always." His politics were driven not by ideology but by empathy. He never forgot what it felt like to have nothing. Maradona also used his fame to support causes he believed in. He criticized FIFA for corruption long before it became a global scandal, calling them a mafia in suits. He refused to be controlled by institutions and always sided with the underdog. Even his behavior on the sidelines reflected this rebellious spirit. As Argentina's national coach at the 2010 World Cup, he was emotional, unfiltered, and raw. During matches, he hugged players, yelled at referees, and even kissed the field. He wasn't trying to fit in. He was trying to feel alive. To many, he symbolized resistance. He represented the kid who comes from nothing, fights the system, and still wins. Whether you agreed with his politics or not, one thing was undeniable. He had the courage to be himself in a world that constantly tried to control him. Maradona's legacy wasn't only in goals and trophies. It was in how he inspired millions to dream bigger, to challenge power, and to stay unapologetically human. He showed that even the most gifted among us can struggle, fall, and still stand tall. Even decades later, murals of him are found not just in Argentina or Naples, but in Cuba, Venezuela, and across South America, each one bearing a message not of perfection, but of passion. As one fan once said, Maradona didn't live a life. He lived a revolution. Number 4. The time he took on FIFA and the world. If Diego Maradona's story proves anything, it's that he feared no one, not even FIFA, the most powerful organization in world football. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, Maradona had already achieved godlike status. But instead of becoming part of the system, he became one of its fiercest critics. It started with his outspoken comments about the way FIFA treated players. While most stars stayed silent to protect their careers, Maradona accused football's governing body of corruption, hypocrisy, and greed. He once said, "They make millions while players destroy their bodies on the pitch." These words weren't polite criticism. They were a declaration of war. In 1990, during the World Cup in Italy, his clash with FIFA reached a boiling point. Argentina faced hostile crowds in every match because Diego had led Napoli, an Italian team, against northern clubs for years. When Argentina played Italy in Naples during the semifinal, Diego made a daring public plea. "Neapolitans, Italy has never cared about you. For once, cheer for us, not for them." That speech shocked the nation. For the North, it was betrayal. For the South, it was heroism. When Argentina lost the final to West Germany under controversial circumstances, including a very questionable penalty, Maradona refused to hide his anger. During the medal ceremony, as FIFA's anthem played, cameras caught him shouting profanities at the officials. To him, football wasn't just a game, it was a battlefield for justice. But his defiance didn't end there. Years later, after retiring, he became even more vocal. He accused FIFA of caring only about money and ignoring the players' well-being. "They've turned football into business," he said. "It used to be about joy." Ironically, when he later coached Argentina in the 2010 World Cup, he was fined for his explosive language at a press conference. His response? "I'd rather have dirty words than a dirty conscience." That single sentence summed him up perfectly: unfiltered, rebellious, and unwilling to bow to power. Maradona's relationship with FIFA remained complicated until the end of his life. But history has a sense of humor. Decades after he called FIFA corrupt, massive scandals proved him right. The same organization that punished him for speaking out eventually fell under global investigation. Even in death, Maradona's words echo in the halls of power. He wasn't just one of the greatest players, he was one of the loudest truth-tellers. He fought not only opponents on the field but also the systems off it. And in a sport filled with corporate gloss, Diego reminded the world that football still belonged to the people. Number 3, From Hero to Coach, the emotional roller coaster of 2010. By the time 2010 rolled around, Diego Maradona had already lived several lifetimes in one. He had been a child prodigy, a world champion, a scandal magnet, and a cultural icon. But then came another unexpected chapter: Maradona, the coach. In 2008, he was appointed head coach of Argentina's national team. For fans, it was emotional. The man who had once worn the Captain ES armband was now in charge of leading a new generation. It was also risky. Diego had little formal coaching experience, and the team was filled with megastars like Lionel Messi, Carlos Tevez, and Sergio Aguero. From day one, his coaching style was pure Maradona, emotional, unpredictable, and fiercely loyal to his players. He hugged them after goals, yelled at referees, and sometimes even cried during the national anthem. When the press criticized his tactics, he snapped back, "To those who didn't believe in me, eat it." He used much stronger words, of course, but for a while it worked. Under Maradona, Argentina qualified for the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, and the whole world was watching. Seeing him on the sidelines again, this time in a suit instead of a jersey, was surreal. His energy was contagious. He celebrated every goal like a fan, running, jumping, and hugging everyone in sight. In the group stage, Argentina dominated. Messi, who was often quiet under other coaches, suddenly looked free. The players adored Diego because he treated them not as subordinates, but as family. "He understood us," one player later said. "He made us feel invincible." But the dream didn't last. In the quarterfinals, Argentina faced Germany, and it was a disaster. They lost 4-0, and Maradona was devastated. Cameras caught him crying in the locker room, consoling his players one by one. When asked about the loss, he said softly, "I gave them everything I had. Maybe it wasn't enough." After the tournament, his contract wasn't renewed. But even in disappointment, Maradona left behind something more important than trophies: a spirit. His brief time as coach showed that his love for Argentina never faded. He once told Messi, "Play like when you were a boy, as if the world is your backyard." That advice captured everything Diego believed about football: freedom, creativity, and joy. Though his coaching career had ups and downs, it reminded fans why they loved him. He wasn't perfect, but he was real. And when you saw him on the sidelines, screaming, laughing, and crying, it felt like football itself was alive again. Even when the results failed, Maradona's passion never did. He showed that leadership isn't about perfection. It's about heart. And in that sense, Diego never stopped being the captain of Argentina. The Curtu, the global saint, Church of Maradona, and eternal worship. For most people, football is a sport. For some, it's religion. But for Diego Maradona, it became both. In 1998, a group of devoted fans in Argentina took their love for Diego to divine levels and literally founded the Iglesia Maradoniana, the Church of Maradona. It started as a joke among friends who worshipped his legacy. But what began in a small town called Rosario grew into a full-fledged global movement. The church has over 200,000 followers worldwide, from Argentina to Spain, Italy, and even Japan. Members celebrate Maradona's Christmas on October 30th, his birthday, and their New Year's CS Eve on June 22nd, the date of the Hand of God and goal of the century against England. Inside the church, fans call themselves Diegorianos. They recite a version of the Lord's Prayer that goes, "Our Diego, who art on earth, hallowed be thy left foot, thy magic come, thy goals be remembered." It's half religion, half celebration of one man's ability to make millions feel divine joy. They even use his jersey number 10 as a sacred symbol. But underneath the humor lies something profound. Maradona represented more than football. He was hope, rebellion, and redemption rolled into one. For people who had grown up poor, beaten down, or forgotten, Diego was proof that greatness could come from anywhere. As one fan in Naples said, "He was our miracle. He made us believe we mattered." Even after his retirement, that love never faded. His face appeared on murals, tattoos, graffiti, and even church altars. When he visited Naples decades later, crowds filled the streets chanting his name, throwing flowers and crying like they were welcoming a prophet. When Maradona died in 2020, Argentina declared 3 days of national mourning. Millions poured into the streets, waving flags, singing his name, and placing candles beneath his statues. For 3 days, the world stopped. From Buenos Aires to Naples, people wept as if a family member had passed away. In that moment, it became clear. Maradona was more than a man. He was a myth, a flawed saint of football who lived like few dared to live, with fire, chaos, and love. And whether you saw him as a genius or a sinner, there's no denying that no player ever touched hearts quite like Diego Armando Maradona. But one, the legacy that outlived the legend. Long after his last goal, long after his last scandal, Diego Maradona's shadow still stretches across generations. You can see it every time a kid from a poor neighborhood dreams of playing for their country. You can see it in Lionel Messi's humble gestures, in every left-footed dribble that dances past defenders, in every stadium where football feels like magic instead of business. Maradona didn't just inspire players, he changed the idea of what football could mean. Before him, the sport was about winning. After him, it was about art, freedom, and rebellion. He made mistakes, yes, but he never betrayed his heart. He once said, "I am black or white. I'll never be gray." And that's exactly what made him unforgettable. Even those who never saw him play can feel his presence. FIFA ranked his 1986 World Cup performance as the greatest in history. His name appears in songs, films, and books. Time magazine listed him among the 100 most influential people of the 20th century. But perhaps the truest measure of his legacy is this: kids in the streets of Buenos Aires still wear his number 10. In Naples, candles still burn below his murals. In Cuba, people still thank him for standing up for the oppressed. And across the globe, fans still argue about who was greater, Maradona or Messi. But that debate misses the point. Without Maradona, Messi might never have believed he could exist. He wasn't perfect, he was real. And that's what made him immortal. Because perfection fades, but authenticity lasts forever. Diego Maradona was the embodiment of human contradiction, genius and self-destruction, humility and pride, chaos and beauty. In his final interview, he was asked what he would say to God if he met him. Maradona smiled and said, "I'd tell him, thanks for letting me play football." That simple line captured the soul of the man who made the world fall in love with the game. Diego Maradona's story isn't just about football, it's about life itself. Passion, mistakes, triumph, and tragedy, all wrapped into one unforgettable human being. His spirit continues to echo in every cheer, every goal, and every child who dares to dream big no matter where they start. If you like this video, don't forget to like and share it to help more people discover the incredible story of Diego Maradona. Hit subscribe so you won't miss our next deep dives into the world's most fascinating legends. Click Join to unlock exclusive member-only content and behind-the-scenes stories. And if you'd like to support our work directly, hit Thanks below. Every bit helps us keep creating amazing stories like this one. See you in the next video, where we uncover another legend who changed the world forever.